So there's a new report out that shows that Donald Trump had actually previously known about the Russian attempts to meddle in the 2016 election. Now, the New York Times reported that before his inauguration, then President-elect Trump was told that Russian President Vladimir Putin had personally ordered complex cyber attacks to attempt to sway the 2016 election. So those cyber attacks, of course, included trying to get into the voter database, which he was unsuccessful at, and failing, of course, to get into any of the machines that changed the vote, but also included things like Cambridge Analytica, Facebook, memes, infiltrating certain groups, etc., etc. Now, Trump was shown that information, which included evidence that included information gathered from a top secret source close to President Putin, which outlined their entire plan. Now, when showed that information, according to the report, which cited multiple people who attended the briefing, Trump sounded, quote, grudgingly convinced. I mean, I guess. Sure. Why grudgingly? Well, think about it this way, right? I think the reason that President Trump is so unconcerned about this is because this ties in with his ego. The whole idea that the Russian government had cyber attacks in place would make his election seem illegitimate. Now, that is one thing President Trump cannot stand the idea of. No, what are you talking about? I won bigly. I put crooked Hillary. Yeah, okay, you did. Because of the Electoral College. Hashtag dismantle the Electoral College. Not because of that, but I think this is the second, maybe third time that the Electoral College has actually taken a win from the popular vote winner and gave it to the popular vote loser. That's not how democracy is supposed to work. But again, I know we're a constitutional republic, blah, blah, blah. Right. Anyway, he doesn't want to admit this because, oh my God, it hurts my feelings. But it makes me seem like an illegitimate president. Well, I got news for you. Probably about half the American people, or at least half the voting public, already think you're an illegitimate president. And by the way, this is a lot like, in a way, President Obama, whom a lot of Republicans believed was an illegitimate president. Although they based that on as he's a Kenyan Muslim socialist from Kenya. And then he had to go back in time or something to change his birth certificate or tell someone to change his birth certificate, etc. Okay, sure. Now, the thing is, right? Okay. So the Russians did not change votes, as I mentioned, right? Now, they attempted to access voter data, as I mentioned as well. They did social media, memes, fake news stories. They infiltrated Facebook groups. They even tried to infiltrate Sanders-aligned Facebook groups, and I have several admins from some of those Facebook groups that admit that were like, yes, some of us were even kicked out by people who had infiltrated and started posting, fake news stories about Hillary Clinton. So now here's the thing about that, right? So did that have a huge impact on the election? I've said before, Hillary Clinton's election, her campaign died a death of 1,000 cuts, right? And one of the reasons is that she was already so widely disliked by potential voters, it largely made the Russian effort kind of moot because people already incredibly disliked her. There was also a lot of, legitimate things to dislike Hillary Clinton over. And yet the Russian and right-wing effort to smear her did come up with some of the most insane conspiracies, and they spread that, to be fair. Now, on Trump. Again, he's afraid of any notion that he did not legitimately win, which I can say, look, I don't like the Electoral College. I never have. But under those rules, he did legitimately win the presidency, even with Russian attempts. Again, no changing of the votes, but what they did was propaganda. Now, we've done that too to other countries, but I think we've done perhaps even more. Now, anyway, as I said before, you challenge his ego, he's going to ignore it. But at the meeting, which took place at Trump Tower, Trump was shown evidence that he at the time couldn't refute. Okay, sure, it happened. Now, that evidence included texts and emails from Russian military officers, as well as information gathered from a top secret source close to Putin, which outlined that their plan, as I mentioned before. Now, in the face of that evidence, the president had to admit that this happened. And then, something changed. Now, what changed? Well, almost as soon as he took office, Mr. Trump began casting doubts on the intelligence on Russian election interference, though never taking issue with its specifics. And that's because he watched things like Sean Hannity and listened to all the Twitter trolls. He dismissed it broadly as a fabrication by Democrats and part of a witch hunt against him. But again, there is collusion and then there's Russian interference. Those two things do not necessarily have to be the same. Nonetheless, he raised unrelated issues, including the state of investigations into Hillary Clinton's server, to distract attention from the central question of Russia's role in who, if anyone, in Mr. Trump's immediate orbit may or may not have worked with them. Now, in July of 2017, just after meeting Mr. Putin for the first time, Trump told a New York Times reporter that the Russian president had made a persuasive case that Moscow's cyber skills were so good that the government hackers would never have been caught. That right there sounds like something that would definitely sway President Trump. No, what you talking about? No, our hackers are so good, Mr. Trump. They're so good, you would never have detected them. Ever. You know what I'm saying? They are that good. Oh, you know what? That's great. Yes. I like the way you think. That makes sense. Because Donald Trump's a simple person. Simple person, simple mind. And of course, it's all about, to him, winning. And it's all about being the best and being the greatest. And if you're the greatest, nobody could ever beat you and no one could ever challenge you. It's just an insight into how he works. And I thought it was kind of funny. But anyway. Now, therefore, Mr. Trump had concluded that Russia must not have been responsible. So again, I want to talk about conflation, right? So this is conflation with collusion and hacking. Now, one of the things, collusion, I can understand. He's like, I didn't do it. I didn't collude. I didn't do anything untoward. I didn't break the law. Everything I did was on the up and up. That's okay. He wants to make that case. He can certainly make that case because we don't have evidence of collusion. At least no concrete evidence of collusion. There's a lot of things that make you scratch your head and think, yeah, maybe there might be some collusion here, but you don't know. And that's the issue. That's why we have an investigation. But the conflation with collusion and with hacking, with him, there is no separate. It's all intertwined to him, which again tells you maybe something, right? So he thinks, no, this hacking, it wasn't Russia. It wasn't Russia. It couldn't be Russia. Well, it is. It happened according to evidence gathered by our intelligence agencies. And it's the collusion that is being investigated, likely because of all the other people around him and connected to him that wittingly or unwittingly worked with Russian sources, including a potential spy that has been arrested. Now, this alleged spy that we have in custody apparently used sex to infiltrate the right wing, including the NRA, and had been a guest at the National Prayer Breakfast. Now, why is that important? I mean, the National Prayer Breakfast is something that is kind of a weird tradition. But when you really read into it, it sounds like it shouldn't be. There should not be a thing. And the whole reason for it, this group that created it, that's also known creepily as the Family, they made it so that they could basically inject religion into politics. And of course, this somehow got to be a tradition among the White House, among the political elite. So now they go to this prayer breakfast. And it turns out this prayer breakfast, while it's also a good tool for recruiting into this religious group, the Family that puts on the prayer breakfast, it's also a good tool for Russians, very right-wing, conservative Christian Russians who share the same kind of religious and political beliefs, to get along with American right-wing conservative Christians. Weird. It gets complicated, it gets messy, but it involves a lot of right-wing conservative figures going back into the 30s and 40s and 50s, even to the 70s, where you had Paul Weyrich after the fall of the USSR going over to Russia to try to spread more Christianity, more conservative evangelical type of Christianity. So, but anyway, look, the Christian right, and by the way, the Christian right meeting with the Christian right in America, meeting with the Christian right in Russia shouldn't be too big of a revelation, really, because they believe in the same kind of things. For example, the reason that Christian right-wingers here in America love Russia and consequently approve of Donald Trump's handling of Russia is because they have the same beliefs. They're the same. They like Putin and his anti-LGBT stances. They like the fact that they go after leftists, that they shut down the free press, and that, look, that he is basically an authoritarian. So it's not new. This isn't a new thing, right? The religious right loves the Russians. The Russians love the religious right because they are the same. They have the same ideology. These are not left-wingers. They're not communists. So, you know, our fundamentalists and their fundamentalists are the same. But anyway, look, they wanted to make Russia more right-wing, more fundamentalist, more Christian. Now the Russians are doing the same thing, right? They want to make it more right-wing, more authoritarian, more religious. And guess what? They have their wish in Donald Trump, whether or not he admits it. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.